Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to say hello and welcome. Welcome to a fresh, brand new edition of the program ASHFORD Live on Bridge Radio Africa. Father God, we want to give you praise. We want to magnify your name. Blessed be your holy name forever. We are grateful to you. With that, folks, I'd like to say that be welcome. Some heard the name and some heard people talk about him. The golden voice of Liberia, the mastermind, the doctor of love, the broadcast commissioner, the medicine of the microphone. He doesn't eat iron, but he's definitely stronger than a lion. Africa's media doobie-doo extraordinaire. The giant that now you know me, GARLEY. Welcome to the show. Gentlemen, what's up? Good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the show. Letty Brooks is running late. Let us begin with the Reverend Idatu's added. Welcome to the show, bro.
Well, greetings to all of our wonderful friends and well wishes. Bridge Radio Africa, we say welcome. God bless you. It's a pleasure to be here. Greetings to you, wonderful panelists, Dr. Fisk, the Giant. God bless.
Dr. James D. Fisk.
Well, greetings to everyone in watching television land, even though this is Facebook. It is a blessing to have life and to have the opportunity to live in a condition of safety. We are hoping to have yet another informative edition of this program. And thanks for taking the time off to watch all of us as we interact to bring all of the information that would help move us forward as a nation. Thank you.
Okay, to our viewers, please do us that favor. Subscribe to our YouTube page and also subscribe to our Facebook page. And you can begin sharing the video now. Our sister, Mrs. Precious Smith Madison of Detroit. It's been a long time, sis. How are you? Regards to your husband, Alvin Kennedy, White Constance, Edith Gunglo West also in the building. Please share the video, invite a few friends so that we can together have a blast tonight here at Bridge Radio Africa here at ASHFORD Live. That is added, James. Today we saw the political actors, something they termed the Farmington Declaration, where they went and when to sign a document to have a violent-free election come October 2023. What do you guys think? But if you ask me, we'll like, why don't they address the issue that is on hand now? The violence that is on hand. The underage voting that is on that registration that is on hand, voters intimidation, the trucking of potential voters from one end to another. Why don't they address that first before going to sign something? Let me begin with the pastor Idatu's at it.
Well, Astro, thank you for the question. I think this is an initiative carried out by the international community in light of all that is happening and what comes as a consequence of elections in case people are dissatisfied. So I want to first of all commend all of the political parties who committed themselves by signing this Farmington Declaration of a violent-free elections. But I also would hope that the government understand that these elections and the security of these elections and the well-being of the Liberian people happens to be their first and foremost priority. Every Liberian must have a commitment to an election-free violence environment that foster, exchange of ideas in the political market space. We can differ with each other politically. We may have our biases, but let us trade these ideas from his perspective of love for country, the greater good, without being, abusive physically, emotionally, or spiritually to one another. So I think it's a good step in the right direction.
James?
The thing is, you have to create the condition for safety. You have to create the condition for peace. In the absence of those elements, um, is just another, I don't know, just another episode because I usually spend some time when I'm less busy just looking through the internet and trying to find information that's relevant to Liberia. And one of those information I saw today was Mr. Yeka Koluba, a representative of District Number 10, who was alleging that the CDC, that's the ruling party of Mr. George Weah, he's accusing the CDC of um, penetrating the National Election Commission. In other words, you have a number of individuals who belong to the CDC that are now being placed into strategic positions within the National Election Commission. And then, and so, if that is not addressed, um, we don't see a situation where you can have an election and everyone will be, accepting of those results. So, it's like putting the cart before the horse. You have to do the work. Signing is just a formality. So, if you are trying to get involved, indulging the formality without doing the work that you have to do as a premise to justify the formality, I don't know what just happened, if you ask me.
Well, Idatus, speaking of what James said about Yeka Kuluba flagging a potential fraud, uh, this lady is a citizen who happens to be working with the National Elections Commission, and she was clearly in communication with the hierarchy of a party, telling people how to come in and register to vote, and then when NEC caught up on that, she got fired. Stanik?
Well, certainly that just reminds me of how tainted these elections are from its very genesis. So I'm not surprised that that this lady has been cut. How many more are there? That's manipulating the process and may potentially affect the credibility of the outcome. These are the recipes of potential discontentments with respect to our elections and the potential degeneration of people. Politics is a very passionate thing. So these elections are highly critical to the stability of our country. Nobody wants any instability at this time. I think more needs to be done to send a strong deterrence regarding this reality. Mr. Kolubai was able to get this evidence to show that this is what is happening. But she's just one person. I'm of the strong conviction that members of various political parties are Liberians, and they should be allowed to work for NEC, but just work with integrity and transparency for the greater good of the country. It shouldn't really matter which party because they are Liberians. They have to vote. You know what I mean? They are Liberians. They have to participate in deciding the destiny of the country. I have no problem with seditions working for the NEC or members of the opposition, any member of the opposition working for the NEC. I have no problem with that. But let's maintain the transparency, the integrity, the accountability necessary to foster a genuine outcome that Liberians can look back and say, you know what, quite frankly, yeah, he or she did win the elections.
James, this is just one district. How many other districts we have these things going on? I was watching the video earlier with a lady in Magiri County, and she said a guy who claims to be an EPS officer brought in 4 people while they were on the line waiting to go in to register the vote. And this guy just came and pushed past them, saying that, hey, we're providing security here when people have to register. Today is Yeke Koluba in District 10. How many other districts are these things going on? These elections are very crucial.
Yeah, and the thing is, you have international observers who will come on the actual election date, right? But the process leading, so long the process is faulty, the outcome will be faulty. Okay, as the computer jargon says, guy go in, guy go out, right? So what you put in is what you get out. Okay, so if you have the process leading up to election being faulty, you have people. There's no way for people to verify that somebody is 18 or less than 18. You have a situation where people are allegedly being trucked from one location to another. That hasn't been addressed because if you are trucking someone from one area to another. It has problem with governance because now you give the impression that district number 10 has a higher population of people that need to be governed. Then what do we do? Do we now have two representatives for one district? But if you artificially pad up the number in one district, and does it mean that you are also prepared to give the requisite financial support that that community requires? So for some reason, people don't seem to understand that whenever they take these steps, the outcome can be very profound. You see, and that is one of the reasons I keep saying it, that we really have a pseudo democracy, and for that pseudoness to be disengaged from the true democracy that we seek, we we need to, number one, have the political willingness as a people, but two, the partners that have encouraged us to be along the lines of democracy need to be fully engaged, not to just wait when there's an election, there's an actual election, and then go to stand by polling booth and then come out and say, well, the election was free and fair. No, maybe the election that they saw, the witness was free, but was it fair? You see, so we need to be a little more critical about these things as they continue to unfold.
And that is, I'm not dismissing the fact of the declaration, the Farmington Declaration, but there are other issues that are still untouched. You know, the opposition needs to be a little aggressive. We are hearing about underage voters, voter registration. This rumor now that kids at 10 years old are registering to potentially vote. Now, this thing has not been addressed. You know, the trucking of voters from one end to another. You know, you don't address these things, and you go to sign a declaration.
Well, I all of those things are very bad, Ashford. They're exceptionally bad, and that is why I'm very convinced that this declaration happens to be the initiative of the international community, whoever they are within that space. And this is where they now need to hold this government very, very, very accountable for these very things that we're saying. You know, it's one thing to not address the triggers or the potential triggers for violence, but you're already, anticipating violence. So you're encouraging them to sign a declaration to hopefully not experience violence. So the underage voting is just one trigger for a potential discontentment that may become troublesome for the stability of our peace after those decisions are being published by the election commission. The underage voting is should be totally unacceptable. Next should be able to send children back home or back to school and just be able to say, listen, you're not of age to vote. What's stopping them from doing that? Who's executing or who's encouraging these children to come up to vote? This happens to be a form of survivalism. Are they being encouraged because they have to survive or because they were giving money to come and do this? Are family members involved in encouraging children to come and vote or, to kind of till the elections for whomever, that has the financial capacity to do this? So this is quite embarrassing for our process. I'm just afraid that elections may simply be a motion as it's already been won before it even started. From the time they've done the census, right? The failure to redistrict, the population increase. From the time they've done the census to report to the public that the people in the Southeast born more children, when the research shows conducted by our international partners that they were the ones who used more contraceptives than those in the western part of Liberia. So it is quite clear that we are poised for an elections that may not have the necessary credibility, that every Liberian can feel proud that it was transparent and free or fair.
Let me do a follow up with you, since you indeed have a soft spot for former Vice President Joseph Boycott. He's in the news. He's saying that the voter registration should be extended. You know, it started on the 26th of March, and in the first six counties, it will be concluded on the 9th. But he asking for extension because initially they experienced a few glitches in the system. This had a little rough start, and to just give people the chance to reach out as well.
I think, in the interest of peace, that is a very fair suggestion. It's clear that NEC lacks the resources to expand its efforts throughout the length and breadth of the country. It's clear that NEC has not been able to train people competently enough as data processors to collect the information and provide the voting cards for people in a very timely manner. So I don't think Liberians should be disenfranchised because of the incompetence of the NEC to be able to demonstrate that they can accommodate the deadline by having Liberians vote. In our last elections, there were about, the voting population was 2 million, only 1.6 estimated voted. 49% were women and 51%, I believe, were men, according to the statistics I looked at. So the fact remains that there's nothing wrong with extending the deadline if you had started, as scheduled, and have the necessary resources to expedite the registration of people. Honorable Boyka would not be asking for an extension.
James.
I mean, beyond just asking for an extension, this is what there was once upon a time I talked about challenging the system on so many levels. So Ms. Boyka, through his lawyer, can reach out to the Supreme Court to actually place an injunction and request for an extension. So in other words, NEC becomes legally obligated to do that. Other than that, you leave it up to NEC, to have the option to say, okay, we will accede to the request that has been made or not. You see, so the process of accountability, election is just but one aspect of it. You have so many aspects of accountability. Okay, and one of those things is what Mr. Boaka has come out to do, is to make a suggestion. But is it just sufficient? And it just as a way of trying to circle back to what you said, Mr. Garley, when you talked about the opposition needing to be able to be a little more aggressive or progressive, whichever term works best for the watching or listening audience. And this is one example of that, where the opposition sees that there has been inadequate time because structurally NEC is inadequate. So, okay, as a result of that, let's do an extension of the time so that the election is fair, even if it's said to be free, but it has to be fair. It has to meet two standards. Okay, so how can the Supreme Court of Liberia go ahead and inaugurate the next president of Liberia if and when it appears that there were an election process that may have been free but not necessarily fair? And unlike other African countries, we've had a very turbulent recent past that, even though Liberians talk about reconciliation, you still have a lot of happy trigger people in our country. And they are willing to do stuff if they don't have things go their way, or at least if they continue to question the legitimacy of the next regime. That is something we really need to pay attention to.
Well, folks, if you just joining us, be a part of the conversation. Be want to be a little interactive tonight. The telephone number to call is 267-248-5295. Call in and chime in as well. The elder James C. Blight is in the building. Elvis Moore, Jesse Fangon, Precious Smith Madison, Ivan Kennedy, Wadi Constance. To all of you good people, please share the video so that we can together enjoy. Don't be selfish. Invite others to join the program as well. As we listen to hearing from our viewers out there, Idatus, uh, the running mates for these uh, political leaders, we still have no idea. I think when the President Weir has his running mate in the person of Mrs. Taylor, boycott is still has still not made his choice yet. We heard about uh, Henry Costa. We also heard about Jeremiah Combe, Yombli Kanga, and as far back as in January, we heard about Mrs. Sarah Beslow Yenti. What's going on? What is it taking so long for the VP boycott to make his choice?
Well, as for the vice presidency, it's quite an interesting position. You serve as a principal advisor to the president. So I believe the vice president is in his own time using the wisdom to guide this decision. And the truth remains, I can empathize with Liberians who are very much concerned that the VP needs to make a decision as quickly as possible. But it's not an easy thing to do on the whim of public sentiment or desire for immediacy. The fact remains that when he selects a VP, Liberians will know in due time. And it is a very critical moment. It's a very politically sensitive decision. So he's taking his time, whilst at the same time empathizing with Liberian people. So they can rest assured that the fact that people want him to select a VP ASAP tells you that he's the most formidable candidate in the race, and hopefully the next president of Liberia.
So, what do you make of of those that were shortlisted? The Costa, the Kanga Lawrence, and of course Jeremiah Cohen.
Well, I think they're all very fine Liberians, and the vice president has to decide as to whether or not his choice will reflect the aspirations of the Liberian people.
James.
When it comes to choosing vice presidents of Liberia, the trend has become like a political union between two political parties. That has become the recent trend. So then you have Mr. George Weah choosing Joe Howard, who was, so to speak, the de facto head of the NDPL of Charles Taylor NPP. Um, so now there's this speculation in addition to the names that you've mentioned. There has been this constant speculation as to whether Mr. Cummings will be the VP to Mr. Boyka, or Mr. Boyka is going to be the VP to Mr. Cummings as yet another political union. And at some point, there was this gossip about Ellen Johnson Sirleaf trying to broker some kind of peace between the two of them and all that kind of stuff. So, long story short, it's important that both Cummings, Boyka, and the rest of the other people in the race choose a vice presidential candidates. But what I will also say is that all of them need to understand what they are in this race for. So as much as people talk about, oh, the opposition need to come together, is it structural coming together they are talking about, or is it, as far as I'm concerned, what would be more effective would be messaging. They need to come together and agree on a common messaging, because what is happening now, the placeholder position that Mr. Weah has put himself in is not working effectively for Liberia. He doesn't have any ambition for the country, and the country cannot survive. Even the Bible says, I mean, because it's a pastor, um, a nation with all vision perish. Okay, so Liberia is at that brink. So the opposition is not about structural unity. They need a unity of message. Because it doesn't make any sense that Mr. Cummings will want to bring Mr. Waka on board as vice president when Mr. Waka don't subscribe to the principles and policies of the ANC only because of political convenience. Those things, they have a way of shattering at some point. You have these unities and all that kind of stuff. Because in New Liberia, after George Weah, needs to be one that's very ambitious, a leadership that's very ambitious, a leadership that's selfless, that's prepared to work, create jobs on behalf of the Liberian people, not somebody who will come and talk about the greatest problem is spiritualism and all that kind of stuff, and people walking around without jobs, and the country is getting harder. We don't want to change to some kind of Somalia where people have to hijack ships on the high sea as a way of maintaining livelihood, especially for a country for the 8,000 square miles, 200 inches of rainfall, bunch of people who don't have jobs, and we cannot show 10 factories that we have in the country that supports the agriculture in Liberia. I mean, that's some terrible picture. So yes, these people need to get their vice presidents, but there are other things that need to be put in place as well, like I mentioned.
Well, that is George Weah was a little concerned during the early days of the CPP when you saw the boycott, the Uri, Cummins, and Yomdi Kang all working together, and people thought that it was a one term presidency for George Weah, And we all saw that the CPP broke away. Everybody went their separate ways, and we are now back. We're hearing again now that there are some talks out there that boycott and commits might work together again. What are you hearing?
Well, what I am hearing are the various sentiments of the Liberian people. Um, Jeremiah Cohn, Costa, Yumbly, the potential for Boyka and Cummings to be together. That's what's out there. But that being said, like I stated earlier, the VP has a very crucial decision to make regarding the destiny of Liberia. Having said that, Ashford, it's very important to understand this. The opposition has already started collaborating. As far as their shared vision, their commonalities are very obvious. Across the board, none of them want corruption. Conglo is advocating against corruption. They all want development. They all want to create jobs. Contrary to what we're seeing now, all of those opposition leaders have a shared vision. The CDC has a pro-poor vision. Unfortunately, after 6 years, we have yet to see what that vision looks like for the ordinary Liberians. So I think the opposition, who have not been given yet the opportunity, Liberians are poised to see a unity that may come at a time very well needed. And we still have time in the race. They have united against they have united to condemn the census and what it was all about. So we will see a lot of collaboration happening. They've all signed the declaration at Farmington. So there will be an opposition unity, and Liberians should just hope and encourage a unity that will foster a wholesome functioning society after that decision is met, in the words of William R. Talbot. And we'll have a president not too long. I'm not surprised that everybody's looking up to the elder statesman to make a decision. It's because they regard him as rescue one.
James, there's nothing in the Constitution that says somebody cannot be VP twice. But in this case, we see former Vice President Boyka as somebody who has the experience, somebody who has been tested when it comes to the governance of Liberia in various capacities, and co- cooperating with Cummins and being number one and coming being number two. I think this is a vulnerable ticket. But on the other hand, Cummins is saying he wants to be the guy, the number one guy. Yesterday, Cummins was in Margibi and he said something very interesting. He said, in the event where I don't win in the first round, I will support the opposition candidate. James?
Yeah, but that's what I've been saying all along. It's not about structural unity. It's about unity around messaging. Okay, that we need a Liberia that works for everybody. Liberia does not need to have a pro-poor agenda because Liberia has never been a poor country. Liberia has been a chronically mismanaged country. Those are two different things. Poor means you don't have. Mismanagement means you have, but then you are misusing what you have. That's where Liberia has always been. Okay. Now, that's one aspect of this discussion. Another aspect of this discussion is all the opposition people keep talking about, oh, we want job. All of them have a laundry list of things they want to do. Is it different from what Mr. Weah and the rest of them said? Well, they all said the same thing too. When Ellen was running to be president, she talked about creating jobs and doing all that kind of stuff. When even Charles Taylor wanted to bring his war to Liberia, he started talking about how the level of poverty in Liberia was so high until Liberian girls were becoming prostitutes. Okay? But once they transitioned into becoming the leaders of the country, we saw something completely different. The narrative changed. Okay? So for me, I've personally been trying to push these political leaders to not give us a qualitative document, but rather give us a quantitative document. In other words, tell us what can you do, what is the extent of what you are able to do, and what is the time frame within which you can do what you say you are able to do. None of them have that as part of the platform. Mr. Cummings cannot tell you that he's going to create X amount of job within a certain time frame. Neither is it reflected in Mr. Boaka's documentation or what's the lawyer and a number of other new people that coming that are introducing themselves into the political electoral landscape. So we need something like that, you see. And someone was asking me, well, so what's the alternative? I said, well, the alternative is that we have to continue to push our leaders hard. If we argue that George Weah is a placeholder, then we must make sure as Liberians that the next person who's coming there is not going to play that placeholder role anymore. We need better things for the country. The level of joblessness is unacceptable, and I continue to argue. You have 2 million people in Liberia. If you are producing things in Liberia, using factories in Liberia, like rice, cassava, oil, and the rest of it, and that 2 million people are purchasing an amount of $100 a month, that's $200 million every year. I want to see the government on this earth that's going to give Liberia $200 million in grant to fix itself. I don't see that government. Over a 10-year period, you're talking up to $4 billion. These are the kind of talk we want to hear from our leaders. We don't just want people to keep talking about, oh well, I have the experience. If Ellen Johnson was running today, she would be the most experienced person in the race. But because of Ellen Johnson, we have George Weah. What does it tell us? It's not about experience, it's about what you can present to the Liberian people that's realistic, that we can hold you accountable. We say, okay, 6 months have passed. You said you are going to create 5,000 jobs. Where are those jobs? Where are those factories? You can't be outsourcing those things to India and China and still be talking about an election. It doesn't make any sense.
Idatus, besides telling Liberians and the rest of the world that George Weah is extremely corrupt, George Weah is inept, what does the opposition have in store come day one when they take over as the new set of leaders?
Right. So as I listen to my friend and brother, Dr. Fix, let it be very clear. I don't want a leader that is going to tell me he's going to produce 20,000 jobs when he has not even done a full assessment of the government he's going to inherit. But I want a leader that can give me a vision concerning job creation, not a quantity, when he has not even managed or gone to see. George Weah made that same statement. Where are the jobs today? So I don't want somebody. So what do I look for? A leader in this current dispensation that brings integrity in the person of Joseph Boyka, who has demonstrated that over 42 years as a civil servant in government, not parading with the wealth of the nation. Two, a man that has both national and international experience, as evidenced by his work with the World Bank. An agriculturalist, wherein Liberians, his vision may be able to encourage agro-industrial farming. That's what I want to hear. Politics, Ashford, is like the balance sheet. You don't go into all the details because you want to win, and you want to win with integrity and with the fact that you can deliver when you win. So all of the oppositions, when you look at the platform, the Cummings, uh, um, Councillor Gongolo, when you look at all of their platforms, it is very clear that what we have now is by far different. Why? Because we have seen that this government has demonstrably failed at delivering its promises that was made to the Liberian people. Not only that, demonstrable ineptitude, rampant corruption, demonstration, slashing of civil servants' salaries that they can feed themselves. When you look at these individuals within the opposition and their standard bearership, you will see very clearly a path that will uplift Liberia from the precipice of poverty below what we have now to bring us to a place where everybody can have a fair share in the shared resources that will be harvested for the greater good of the country.
James, Idatus just give us a laundry list uh, things that Honorable Boyka has on his belt. Why don't you think they're valid?
Oh, well, I mean, I kind of differ a little bit. And the reason for that is that So, for instance, let me give you an example. Somebody says that I'm going to create job through empowering the private sector. Okay, and another means by which I'm going to create jobs is through direct foreign investment. Okay, now these are it's still a qualitative statement that is being disguised as a quantitative statement, so to speak. Okay, so let's talk one and then let's look at the other. It's a private sector. When you talk about private sector in Liberia that has been chronically mismanaged, who are you really speaking of when you talk about private sector in Liberia? You're actually talking about the Lebanese and the Indians and now the Chinese in the making. Those are the people that run the private sector in Liberia. Okay, so if you talk about, oh, in order to create jobs, I'm going to empower the private sector. What you've said is that the importation, the feeding of Liberians is going to be through the importation of rice from places like China and India. So then you continue to outsource that, and meanwhile marginalize Liberian farmers. Okay. Then you talk about direct foreign investment. When you talk about direct foreign investment, what are we talking about? Historically speaking, it's just about the extraction industry. People want to come and go after the diamond, go after the gold, go after the iron ore, and all those kinds of things. So we, by the time you are in opposition and wanting to rise to the level of the presidency, which means to say you've already done your homework, you've already understood and the challenges of what it takes to run a country. You already understand those challenges, so you're not coming in as a complete newbie. You may not be okram with the specifics of what is happening in your country, but the president drives the agenda of the nation. Okay, so if you don't think that you have that much gravitas, then of course then you need to pack yourself and go on the side. But if you think that you have a big ambition for the country, okay, look at Donald Trump, for instance, who was just arraigned today. Okay, Donald America has historically had its own political pattern. Donald Trump came and changed a lot of those things overnight. Okay, so whoever is wanting to be president of Liberia is not completely impotent, unless, of course, they've not done their homework. So there's a lot they can do for the country as opposed to not being able to do. So that's the challenge I think that they have not risen to and they need to be.
Okay, thank you, folks. If you just joining us, this is ASHFORD GARLEY live on Bridge Radio Africa. We come your way on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Fridays on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, you name it. We have a caller on the line. Hello, caller.
Hello, Mr. Garland. This is Elvis calling from Minnesota.
Elvis, welcome to the show. Go ahead and speak.
Thank you. And I want to extend my greetings to the other two panelists. Quickly, I want to address the whole JMB plan about creating jobs. The guy he never worked in the private sector. He was always a public servant, never created any job that we know of. So where is this job creating going to come from? He doesn't have an economic advisor who, espouses his economic plan for the country. He has these sycophants, surrogates who comes out and talk about arrest and rescue and this and that without any concrete plan that we can look at to see if he even have, the qualified individuals behind him to formulate these plans and then have the people who will implement them. So
Can
people
I
talk about JMB, creating public private sector jobs. The thing that made good as being agriculturalist, is agriculture minister.
Okay,
You know,
Elvis,
so
Elvis, I want you to hold on. Don't leave. Stay on the line. Let me bring Idatus in, and then James can chime in as well. Idatus, you just listen to Elvis.
Well, I would give credence to Elvis dismiss Mr. Boyka's experience and contribution to his nation's state. As we speak to you right now, someone who is dedicated to the wholesome functioning society of Liberia, you will see that in Bunk County, there's a 127.3 acres of land what Joseph Boyka has harvested and given to people to conduct subsistence farming. That's a wholly and solely sponsored by him. In Liberia, there are areas where he has submitted 6 ferries to help the Liberian people. Do you want to talk about job creation? It's only important that if you must criticize a candidate, then you ought to read about him. He has made his contributions to Liberia both in private and public sector. A lot of us like to believe he only worked in the private sector, but when he left government, what did he do? It's a question to ask yourself. When he left government temporarily, what was he doing? And the other thing we need to understand, Ashford, um, government is responsible for creating the environment that empowers the private sector. That's the role of government. That's the private sector. The public sector are those entities and agencies that are directly controlled by the government. So,
Okay. I'll hold you there. James, tell me before we get a final word from Elvis and take another
Okay.
call.
So yeah, just before Elvis leave, I just wanted to ask him because my consistent argument on this platform has been that it is about time that we get all the political leaders focused on trying to create jobs. And I think one of the best ways to create massive job employment for Liberians is through the creation of factories. And one of the ways that you can create factories that will be efficient is factories that will be able to harness things that are grown in Liberia. So then you are supporting local farmers. By supporting local farmers, you are empowering them to be able to address their responsibilities. So you don't need to go build pipe-borne water in the villages when everybody in the village are making farm and selling to the factory that is then processing rice or cassava or whatever and selling back to the public. So people have money to build their own homes. People have money to send their children to school and the rest of it. So I just wanted to hear Elvis's take on my consistent argument that I think the best way forward for Liberia is not any kind of reconciliation or we need to get back to Jesus Christ and all those things. I think it's about creating jobs for the country so that you have a massive amount of Liberians. And we need to stop outsourcing to China and to India. I just wanted to hear his take on it.
And Elvis, please come in. Keep it clean. Go ahead.
Oh, keep it clean. I've never ever been dirty, Mr. Garley.
Okay, go
But
ahead.
let me just say, I think Mr. Dr. Fisk, you have a good plan. But again, our problem in our country is money. It all boils down to money. Having a very, small budget for a country our size. So when you're talking about opening factories, first of all, do we have the know-how? Do we have the technical knowledge do we have people who have the technical knowledge to open the factories that you're talking about? But again, like Dr. Datus was saying, and let me say this quickly, Dr. Datus, I know you very, very, very well. I know your family extremely well from Congotown. I know your sister Sharon. I know your niece Erica and Antoinette. I know your entire family from Congotown. So I have a great deal of respect for you. So sometimes when I call on the show and disagree with you, doesn't mean I'm against you. I have a lot of love and respect for you. But quickly, before I get off the line, Mr. Garley, I think when people talk about JMB and trying to push his candidacy forward, they shouldn't talk about somebody who is on the economic front. He's not that guy, like they can say in America. He hasn't done anything for the people of Lofa, people who are in his constituents. He hasn't done anything for them. He's a guy who was a park car. Can you imagine this? A guy that this man was going traveling all over the world, engaging in bilateral conversation with his counterparts, relaying messages for the president in different countries. But he said she parked him. He was a park car. How can you say that? That's being dishonest. So right off the bat, he's saying that he wasn't used for his intended purpose. He was being neglected, and he wasn't allowed to serve his country. This is what he's telling us when he said he was a park car. So when people try to make that argument for boycott, I don't buy it. But I think Dr. Fitz, you have a great plan. But the problem is, the people we need, the qualified people who have the intellect and the resources to implement the plans that you're talking about. I'll leave it there. Thank you for taking my call, Mr. Kyle.
Thank you, Elvis. We have a 612 number. Tell us the name, please.
Yeah, my name is Terry calling from Minnesota.
Go ahead. Make your point, please.
Yeah, I think the caller that just left the line is speaking completely out of ignorance. Because first of all, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf did not bring nothing. She didn't do anything for Liberia before she became president. Charles Taylor didn't do anything for Liberia before he became president. Likewise, George Weah. So what did George Weah do out of the 85 million he had? What he did for Liberia? What was his agenda before he became president? So all that thing he's talking is bogus. Even Cummings, what has Cummings done before he's trying to become president for Liberia? Even though they all claim to be competent. What we need to understand that Liberia needs is what Joseph Boga has, which makes him to be the best candidate for the race right now. Number one, integrity. Liberia needs somebody with integrity. This man has worked in government for 42 years without any record of corruption. That is the first thing you need right now. We have been finding it difficult to have leaders that does not have corruption hang on their neck. Joseph Boga happens to be that man right now when it comes to leader with experience politically. He has served as VP, all right? And he's saying he was packed out because there were so many things that he could have done that he wanted to do. The man said he's an agriculturalist. He during his tenure in agriculture ministry,
I'll give you 30 more seconds, please. 30 more seconds.
So yeah. So lastly, you have the wisdom. We need a leader with wisdom. You have the wisdom. You bring wisdom to the table. It is the wisdom to lead that will attract investors and opportunities for Liberians to have jobs. You need men with wisdom and the ability to articulate what to do to create the opportunity for the environment to be suitable for our people.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we want to take this call and go back to you guys. We have Dr. Banton Kula on the line. Hello, Doc.
How you doing? Ashford?
I'm better than good.
Good. What I wanted your panelists to do is to please, when they're speaking to our people, break some of this stuff down, because what I realize is that some of our people, including the LU students, don't know what some of these things mean because it's not real and practicalized in our country. For example, when we talk about the economy being run by the private sector, and the private sector creating jobs, and that government creating the enabling environment for that to happen, they don't understand that, because when they see George Weah build a park and they make a big hoopla about it, or they see Joseph talking about he's building roads and he's building schools, that are his schools and stuff like that, they don't understand that concept. They think that government should do everything. So as a result of that, they think America does nothing for Liberia because America is not coming around building a bunch of infrastructure for Liberia like China does. So we need to explain to our people the difference between communism and capitalism and what it means for government to create an environment for the private sector to thrive instead of government having to change everything. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Welcome, Letty. Let me begin with Idatus.
Well, Ashwa, I certainly agree with the caller. We certainly need to dumbing down our rhetoric so that Liberians can understand us. I don't disagree at all with him. But many people don't know that Joseph Boyga's first degree is in business administration. First degree. He got that from the University of Cottonton. A lot of people don't know that. So all they see is this guy who's worked through government for several years, but do not also see his expert and experienced ability to manage government. He is an administrator. So why I think politically we stand a better chance with Mr. Boyka is: one, he has a name recognition; two, he has a vision; three, politics is tribal; four, he has the experience of government both in private and public sector as well as international. Not many people know that he was a consultant for the IMF. Not many people know he worked, not the IMF, for the World Bank. So this guy is pretty much seasoned in terms of where Liberia can go next. And that's why he's come up with a very simple vision. All of us want to be self-sufficient, food security. The United Nations, you look through all of Africa, the vision now is food security, innovation, infrastructure development. And what's his vision? Agriculture, roads, education, right? Sanitation and tourism. That's the vision. Now, one can legitimately ask the question, well, how are you going to make this come to reality? And that's the beauty of campaign. Campaign allows us to break it down to the Liberian people what we intend to do in details. I'm certainly hoping that one of these days that we'll have a debate session. I'm certainly not expecting the president to participate because he did not do that the last time, where all of these candidates can showcase their vision for Liberia, potentially in details or specificities in terms of how they're going to make this happen. And I certainly want to believe that Honorable Boyka may be in the best position to make that clear for the Liberian people.
Well, you know what? No, maybe he might show up now. Now that he has a breaking record with the few feeder roads that he has paved. James, come in.
Right. I'm certainly hopeful that he does.
Yeah, I want to talk about two things. Number one, there was something the first caller from Minnesota talked about, and then number two, I want to talk about the not so corrupt record of Joseph Boyka. So the caller from Minnesota said that well, it's all good that we want to. It's important. It's important to talk about bringing factories to Liberia, but we don't have the know-how. No, we don't need to go to. We don't need to go to the Chinese government to bring rice factory to Liberia. No, we can go to the Chinese companies. They have expos. In most other African countries, one of the reasons why Ghana is thriving today is because you have Ghanaian entrepreneurs going into China and purchasing at the expo and fixing doors, have machines that fix doors, have black machines, and they're going into construction. They're using machines from China. You have rice, go and Google a rice mill. Okay, I think one really good rice mill is like 150,000 United States dollar. Are we saying that Liberian government don't have 150,000 United States dollar? Meanwhile, we in the age of technology, people are buying iPhone 14. They are not buying iPhone 14 from U.S. government. They are buying iPhone 14 from factories. So that same knowledge can apply to being able to bring factories into Liberia. To get a factory, all you need is a building and a machine. The machine you can purchase from companies. You don't need the Chinese government to do that. So that is that we can get that done. Okay. The second thing, let's talk about Liberia for one. And as the vice president, you are also president of the Senate. Okay, president of the Senate, and you work along with the speaker who is in charge of the House of Representatives to create laws that work in the interest or that should work in the interest of the country. Okay, right now let's look at the pay that lawmakers are making right now in as compared to what the country is producing in terms of GDP. Is it realistic? I don't think it is. Okay, the pay that they have is not commensurate with the production that's ongoing in the country. Okay, so is we cannot have a system in which you have a disproportionate pay rate between people at the highest echelons of government and those who work within the lower echelons of government, civil society, and the rest of it. So there was always a need to strike a very good balance. Okay, and Joe Boyka was one of those who presided over the national legislature as president of the Senate over a very long time. And we saw that within that time period, there was a consistent but gradual escalation of the pay of people who work within the national legislature, that is senators and representatives, to an extent that right now it should be embarrassing that their pay is something similar to what U.S. lawmakers make, but yet and still they want to go and beg America for things. Why would you be making the same pay as U.S. lawmakers or congressional officials and then still want to go back and beg? So we need to be realistic with things that we do. We don't need to use the Constitution and the statutes to make illegal laws. Okay, and these are things that are happening. So people are legally taken away from the country only because they are hiding behind the shield of the statute or the Constitution. And we cannot say that Joe Boyka was completely out of the loop when those things were happening. You see, so we can't say, oh, this guy has clean hands, so to speak. And if he had
Thank you,
clean
James.
hands, yeah, we wouldn't have George we are today.
Thank you, James. I know Idatus will want to come in when it comes to the Joe Bagari.
Well, so
Hold
right.
on,
So
just before you,
uh-huh.
I want to introduce Letty to the show. You know, she said she was running a little late. Mrs. Roberts, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good evening, all. Thank you for such great conversation. Again, Tuesday is my late night, so I had to
Right.
do my
Okay.
first duty. But thank you all. I'm
Okay.
here.
Okay, Idatus, go ahead.
Well, let me start with the issue of clean hands first. It is quite clear that the vice president position is quite ceremonial. He presided over the Senate, quite frankly, to break the vote tie. He's not the one, exploring different positions and agreements and so forth and so on. We all know that the presidency carries the weight of the nation state. Make no mistake about that. And that is why when you look back, you cannot point to some of the things that, for example, Dr. Harry F. Moneyback did as vice president on the Doe. You can look back and point to so many significant things that President William R. Talbot did under President Tubman. And the list goes on and on and on. So as they serve to the pleasure of the president, it becomes very clear that it's basically ceremonial. What can we point to that Vice President Joe Howard is substantially and significantly doing to change the destiny of our country? No, because they serve to the pleasure of the presidency. So make no mistake. In fact, when when the VP Boyka stated he was a park car, the beauty about politics, actually, is that people can take it and spin it any way they want, and that is absolutely fine. But the context, you can never run away from the context. The park car was simply made in an effort to let the Liberian people know that I mean more for you. I can do better for you. But given the constitutional structure of the VP, you can do much serving to the pleasure of the president. And that is why Mr. Cummings has been very clear. He doesn't want to be a VP. But you can rest assured under Mr. Boyka, the VP will be much more formidable, useful to executing the agenda of the nation.
Okay, well, folks, if you just joining us, this is ASHFORD Garley live on Bridge Radio Africa. This program comes on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Fridays on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, you name it. Well, we have a young man backstage now. He's an advocate. He's been in the trenches for Liberia. You can't tell me that he doesn't love his country. He wants to be the next senator of Margibi County. At this time, please join me as we welcome Mr. Veneta Patricks. Mr. Patricks, welcome to Bridge Radio Africa.
Thank you, Mr. Garley. It's a pleasure being with you. And to your incredible panelists, let me say good evening. It's almost 12:30 here in Liberia. So currently I'm in Kak City, Kakata. If you are listening to this podcast, I'm visiting Kakata, and I've been touring the entire District 3, District 4, District 5. And so I'm in Kakata this evening. And so I'm so sorry. My internet was so terrible today. So I apologize for coming late. So it's good to be on your platform this evening.
Well, tell us about the voter registration process in Kak City.
So it's not just in Kak City, but the entire Margibi. We don't have scientific evidence with respect to who is a Margibian because we see a lot of people coming in. Some of them are various voter registration centers. They ask them questions. Where were you born? Are you from Margibi? And you could see the deception from their facial expression. And you can vividly see that many of them are trucked to Margibi. And many of our people are also trucked out of Margibi to go into other countries. So the entire voter registration process is peaceful, but many of the people are being trucked. Representative candidates, there are reports on social media. I went to two of the centers. There was a complete commotion, people pointing fingers at, at various representative candidates for trucking people because they don't belong there. They don't believe that they are residents of Maigibi. If you say you are a resident of Maigibi, you should be able to name certain communities where you live and how long you've been in Maigibi, where can you be traced. So these questions are not being asked by the National Elections Commission. And so people who are on the sideline, I don't know whether it's psychological, but as long as you move in a community where you never lived before, you appear very strange, and that is something that many of the people are pointing out. So the voter registration process is ongoing. And so I came in Kakada today to sensitize the people to go and register and to also discourage them from being trucked from Maigibi to other districts and in other counties. So peacefully, it's peaceful. But I suspect some level of deception. And this is an open confession. Many people are trucked from different countries into Maigibi because some people want to win the elections by trucking people. And I think it's not healthy for our democracy.
I know the guys will come in, but tell us about your strength. You've been in Liberia, specifically Maigibi, now for quite some time now. Tell us about your chances of becoming the next senator.
Well, like today, let me just be very, emphatic. The political process here, like I always say to people, the people want someone who is open, very honest, and I'm saying this on this platform not because I am running for office. I'm not desperate. Believe me, I've had the chances to be appointed into government under the Ellen Johnson Sirleaf government, and I rejected all these governmental positions. But my chances are clear. Number one, I hail from the Firestone Belt. Interestingly, one of my competitors, who happens to be my big brother, Richard Sagboli, and I told him, I said, big brother, I think it doesn't make sense at this time for you to contest for the Senate. I had the time 2005 to contest, and you squandered the opportunity. And 2011, you were defeated. You went to run for the Senate in 2014, you were also defeated. And so it does not make sense at this time that people of Maigibi will look at you as the next alternative. And what I have done is to manage my public narratives. I hail from Firestone. The predominant population of Maigibi hails from the Firestone plantations.
30 seconds.
And I have gone to them. I have shared with them my stories. A story of inspiration, not a story of political enthusiasm. No, a story of motivation. I have made them to understand I'm a son of a rubber tapper. My parents could not read and write. I grew up under extreme difficulties. I had to live as a houseboy.
Thank you, Patrick.
With someone in Harbour Hills. And as such, having this opportunity to graduate from poverty to reach at this level is an opportunity for us to represent our people. Besides being an activist for a long period of time. And so these chances are enormous. So if you look on my Facebook page, I have completely decided not to write anything about my engagements.
Well said. Well said. Let me bring the guys in. We have 20 more minutes to be out of here. Let me bring the guys in. Perhaps they have something for you. Let us begin with Idatu Sade.
Well, I certainly want to congratulate Mr. Vendela Patricks. I have followed this young man for some time. I think his integrity is noteworthy. He's been a front line for human rights or a concern Liberians against human rights and impunity. In Philadelphia, I sat on some panels with him where we discussed issues. So I certainly have a soft spot for him. You juxtapose him as a guy who has been a human rights fighter for the Liberian people against corruption, and that of Nathaniel McGill, who has been accused by the US government and in fact sanctioned, I think the Liberian people have a clear choice to make. Someone who has been in the trenches fighting for them, their human rights, fighting that the government is able to share the resources in a way that does not deprive them of schools and good health care and being able to feed their families. I think Mr. Patrick, tell the Liberian people, don't be shy about your vision for Margibi. Tell them what do you hope to do when you enter the Senate?
And Mr. Patrick, just give us 2 minutes with a response.
I want to appreciate my dear brother, and I truly appreciate you. Like I said, Mr. Garley, you and I were in the United States. I went there for 2 reasons: to have an exposure of global politics and to build myself intellectually and educationally. And sometime in 2019, I was opportune to obtain a scholarship to go to Harvard Kennedy School of Government. And at that institution, I made a solemn decision that upon my graduation, I will go to Liberia to represent my interest, to represent the interests of Liberia. When I'm in the Senate, I want to give an inspiration to a new breed of generational leaders, a leadership that represents and projects a new image of Liberia. My GB, the country that I want to represent, has a county development budget of 425,000, a population of 230,000 plus. We survive on 425,000. I think our people are in slavery. I want to be that senator that will go across the continents, Europe, America, Australia, Canada, to build international connections. If the president of the Republic of Liberia, I'm not talking about the current but previous governments, can travel to look for investors to come to Liberia and invest, I want to be that senator to inspire confidence in a new breed of leaders and build that connection to
Thank
go
you.
out. Just recently, I was in Germany.
And
I
we
had the opportunity to meet with a lot of investors. They want to invest in Africa, but they don't have the leaders they can trust.
Thank you.
And I think I
Hold
bring
on.
trust and credibility to the process.
Thank you so much. We'll bring in Mrs. Letty Brooks Roberts.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Garley. Good evening, Mr. Vandilla Patrick. Nice to see you. I also happen to have met you at the UN some years ago, protesting during the president's visit. Um, I hear you say you want to inspire the new generation or the current generation. How are you going to do that?
One of the characteristics of a good leader is to be a mentor. I'm not just saying this because I am running for public office. For the past 15 years, I've been in the area of activism. I've grown people, mentored them into productive leadership, and today some of them are becoming some of the best leaders in Africa, not just Liberia. What I intend to do, we lack international connections. Not just my Gibi, but Liberians are not telling their stories. I want to give an international exposure. How do I intend to do that? One thing we need to understand, there's no small senator, there's no big senator. When I was in Washington, D.C., I had the time to work with the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation as a volunteer for 2 years. And as a senator, I want to open that corridor to inspire confidence in the minds of a new breed of leaders. One way to do that is to give them educational empowerment. Look, let me say this to all of you who are listening tonight. As a sitting senator of Liberia, if I decide to write 100 universities around the world, asking them just for 5 slots for the best brains, best doctors, best nurses, best teachers, and you can go and name them from Liberia who need educational empowerment. Out of 100, I will have at least maybe 10% or 10 universities that will say, Mr. Patrick, we are willing to help you. And you know what? and some of them will benefit. I did that before. The few years I spent in the US, up to 15% travel from Liberia, including Mike Gibby. Some of them are at various universities in the US. Some of them are now working, they graduated, they are working in the US, and
Thank
some of
you.
them are now in Australia.
Hold that thought right there. We'll bring in Dr. Fisk.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Patrick, and welcome to the program. Senator Darius Dillon, before you, when he came on the stage, one of those things he expressed concern about is the consistent exchange of money within the legislature. And he didn't think that most of the money that were being exchanged were merited by the national legislature and needed to be redirected towards the people. What is your take on that? That's number one. Number two, you talk about your county having a developmental budget of over $400,000, but when you were asked, when you decided to voluntarily speak to the issues affecting Margibi, I think it sounds to me that you think the biggest problem is educational empowerment. Tell us about the so it gives me the impression that you have a significantly high number of people employed in Margibi. If that's not the case, why is it you have not thought about using $400,000 to build factories in Margibi that would support farming so that people become empowered in Margibi? How come you've not thought about that yet? Help me understand
So,
those things.
yeah, I hope the panelists will have the time to give me some time to answer these questions. Well, I have said this very clearly. And let me just make this emphatically clear. Margibi has a budget of 425,000. That is peanuts. If you give me the opportunity, I can eat that money, in 3 months before we talk about 230,000 people. I think Margibi and other countries in Liberia, we are dependent on the national government. I want to bring a new breed of leaders. I'm talking about building a think tank that will not only survive on 425,000, but to make our own money. The World Bank has so many programs. You talk about agriculture. Let me just speak to that very quickly.
I talk about factories, I talk about factories, not necessarily agriculture. I said factories to support agriculture.
Well, 425,000, the economic system in this country. Public officials are corrupt. The money is approved, 425,000. Before it gets to the county development budget, maybe it will be reduced. Maybe the one they will receive will be around 225,000. As I speak to you, we have over $3 million unfinished projects in Margibi. The current superintendent, Jerry Vanning, just spoke about it when he took over recently. So I'm saying to you, corruption is systemic. That's one. Number two, we cannot develop Margibi with $425,000. $425,000, it does not come directly to the people who are making decisions. So as a senator, one thing I want to disabuse the minds of residents in Margibi is to ensure that integrity is reflected in the governance sector. The World Bank, for example, is providing significant resources, monies, for agricultural purposes. So if we build a think tank that is responsible to advise the county leadership as to how to get involved into agriculture, maybe rice production, for example, if we can have loan or grants from the World Bank that is very much optimistic or supporting low-income countries in terms of producing what they consume, I can guarantee you that Margibi will be one of those countries that will benefit. The reason I'm saying the 425,000 is insufficient. You have healthcare, you have education, you have agriculture, you have education.
Mr. Patrick, the 425,000, is it excluding the county development funds that usually come?
I'm saying that is the only money we receive for development purpose in Margibi. The government of Liberia projects certain budget because they want to, in the 15 countries, multiply. Some countries get more, but for Margibi, we receive 425,000. So I am saying that money is peanuts. We cannot survive on $425,000. If we do that, it means poverty will come knocking our doors. As a senator, what I want to do is to from depending on the government for 425,000 to make our own money. How do we generate that money? There's a law that says any company that operates in your country, they should pay at least 10% of the revenue they generate to the government of Liberia. 10%. Assuming we have Firestone, we have Salala, we have so many companies here. Firestone, for example, let's assume Firestone is supposed to pay a revenue to the government of Liberia in taxes, 20,000. 10% of 20,000, 20 million is supposed to come to the covers of my giving. My goal is to ensure the law is the law. We want to collect that money. Firestone, you operate in our country.
And
What is your social responsibility, corporate social responsibility to the
60
country?
minutes after 9,
you.
folks. If you just joining us, this is ASHFORD Garley live on Bridge Radio Africa. I believe Dr. Fish has a follow up. If not, we'll believe that.
I mean, the thing is that unfortunately, my question was never answered. And that's the problem I have with Liberian political leaders. For some reason, when it comes to thinking about creating jobs, people, it's just like a blackout. You talk about $400,000. Even if it's $100,000, $100,000 can create a rice factory that will be able to support all of the farmers in Margibi. And those farmers can sell the rice by bushels to the factories. That factory can then take that rice, clean that rice, sell that rice to Margibi. I was saying on this show, you do the calculation, Mr. Patrick. Let's assume that you have maybe a population of how much? 100,000 people in Margibi, or maybe 200,000. Take 200,000 and let's assume that you are selling rice made in Margibi to Margibians, and they are purchasing maybe $20 worth of rice every month per year. Do the calculation and see how much
So
you're
let me
gonna
just
get.
hold you right there quickly.
I'm coming. It's going to be significantly more than any kind of money you talk about Firestone. Why is it Liberians are only concerned about these things those structures that are already in place? Why can't people think about thinking out of the box to help their own people? I can't understand this about Liberian politics and Liberian politicians. They just don't seem to get it.
So let me just hold you right there. I'm not a politician. I am an activist. So the fact that I'm contesting to be a senator for Margibi does not in any way categorize me as a politician. I am
You
an
became
activist.
a politician once you started to run for Senate.
Oh, no. I want to respectfully disagree. I am an
And I
activist.
respectfully
It
disagree
does not
too.
mean
Once you ran for president, once you ran for senator, you became a politician.
Oh, no. This is the misconception we have had about Liberia. It doesn't mean that you...
Mr. Patrick, are you there?
Preach on a platform. So from the sermon that day, you are automatically qualified to be a bishop or you are qualified to be a reverend. It was only a privileged opportunity given to you to speak to the congregation. It does not qualify you to be a preacher man or to be a pastor. I am saying I am an activist. I was trained to be an activist. I was groomed to be an activist. But let me say this to you. You are quite right. I think you and I, we are sailing in the same direction. But this is my point of disagreement. My job as a senator is to advocate to make sure that things are done in the right direction. I am not the chief executive officer of Margibi. The chief executive officer of Margibi in terms of the leadership structure is the superintendent. I am saying to you, I can advocate that the $425,000 is very small. Mind you, the $425,000 the government of Liberia is giving to Margibi is not only for agricultural purposes. You have healthcare. The people in the health right now, CH Rennie Hospital is not functional. It got burned, and our people have to be driven to Monrovia for medical treatment. The educational system is deplorable. Agriculture sector is bad. The economic freedom, many of our young people, our more vulnerable women, they are not making businesses. So if you spend most of the money on agriculture, it means certain sector, healthcare will not have enough money. Education will not have enough money. The student community will not have enough money to build their human resource capacity. I am saying to you, as a senator, one way we can tap the already small money that is given to us is to advocate. One of the reasons why
And I
I
want you
want
to
to
land.
give
I
some.
want you to land on one of the reasons. Then it will go to Idatis. Go ahead. 30 seconds.
So I am saying to you, you are right. But we can't spend all the money on agriculture. And maybe some people will be dying while you are making farms. So I'm saying to you, we want to reduce this idea of dependency on the government of Liberia for $425,000.
Thank you.
We
And
want
I
to
would
have
say,
more
and I would say
resources.
one more time before I just come on. I've said it over again. It's not agriculture; it's about creating factories. All you've mentioned is that we have a number of problems that need money, and factory is become an income generator for that community, and
But
you
then,
have
but
not bought onto that yet. So
But the
I'll let
money
you
is too
that.
small. I agree with you. The money is too small to do what you're talking about. You
Have you
have the
investigated
population
how much
are
a
coming.
rice meal will cost? Have you
Oh no, no,
investigated how
listen to
much a
me.
rice meal will cost? Have you
So there
investigated
is
how
in
much
economic.
a
I
rice
want to
meal,
ask you, in
a rice
economic we
meal?
have scale of
Have you
preference.
investigated how much a rice meal will cost? Have you investigated
Oh
that?
no, no. I think what is most important is life. If you do scale of preference in economics, somebody
Mm-hmm.
will not be dying in a hospital. And you
Mm-hmm.
instead of you saving the life of that person, you want to use that money to make rest farm. I think that would be the most stupid decision in the history of our country. The first law of nature is self-preservation. And we must understand that the money is small. And this is what we are saying. Everything that you are saying is good. Nobody is saying that that decision is not unique. But we are saying to you, and I
Mr.
want to repeat,
Mr.
the
Patrick,
money is small.
keep it
425,000
there.
is too
I want
small
you to hold
to
out.
solve all the problems.
Patrick,
You
thank you,
cannot tell
sir.
me that somebody will be dying. You save the money to go make
How
farm.
come you like? Is that your device?
I, I don't think this is my device.
Well, let with.
Oh,
Can you please
I
mute
mean,
Somebody
you,
needs to
you,
mute.
I
Somebody
don't think
needs to
it's my
mute. Okay, let
device.
everybody mute.
Okay. What's it talking about? Letty, I saw your hand up first. So you might want to come in and we'll bring
thank
in
you,
that.
thank you so much. I have two points to make. To Mr. Patrick, Mr. Patrick, you are an activist, but as you said, after you have moved in, running for elected office, you become a politician. But as an activist, you just told us about the people coming into your county that may be that may not be members or citizens of that county. As an activist, what are you doing to make sure that is being that NEC is aware of this issue?
So basically, there's no law. Our political system, and this is why I blame the judicial system of our country, is very corrupt to the core, and this is the reason why many of us are suffering in Africa. There was a law that was passed sometime that a sitting representative can leave from Masorado while they are still representing the people of Masorado. They can go and contest in Grand Bassel. That was ridiculous. And so it defeats the purpose of accountability. What we can do is to sensitize our people. There's no law. Someone leaves from Monrovia, they say they were born in Maigibi. Apparently, I've done the historical analysis of Maigibi. They know various times. The National Election Commission will ask, where are you from? I'm from Kakata. Which year you were born? You call your name. Who are your parents? You call your name. At the end of the day, you are automatically qualified. Because I went to register. There was no difficult question. They asked me,
So
what,
when these people are registered in Margibi and say they went to Monrovia, well, yeah, Monrovia, can they also vote there since they're not
but they
questioning?
don't come from there. They go there to vote. I mean, I've been very honest. I was on the radio and somebody said, anybody that give me 5,000 Liberian dollar, I will follow you. I go register in your district.
Thank
I
you,
want
Mr.
money.
Thank you, Mr. Patrick. We are running out of time. I will bring in Idatus to give us 1 minute and then you can respond and we'll call this a night. Idatus, please unmute your phone. Idazi, please unmute your device.
Thank you. Well, Ashford, I think it is an unfair expectations. I mean, unfair expectation that we want to put on Mr. Patrick, especially senators, and that is in fact why we have corruption. He just told us that the county's national budget is 400,000 for people of 200,000, whilst the Minister of State for Presidential Affairs budget just increased from 10 to 20 million dollars. One ministry and a people of 200,000 getting 400,000. The role of the senator is to pass law, secure funding through the budget to support special projects and programs in his county. It's not his role to go and negotiate and build factory. That's a conflict of interest potential. So that's not a role of the Senate, unfortunately. But when you have a president who traveled 48 days, that almost used up $1 million plus and brought back nothing for the Liberian people to point to, it's a problem. When you have a first lady that has a budget of $2 million and the people of Margibi has 400,000, that kind of disparity deserves advocacy. And I think that is what he's trying to communicate here tonight. And we shouldn't hold them at that level of go bring factory, go bring, this and that to the county. That's not a role of the senator. You're exposing them to potential corruption, worse than what we have now.
Thank you, Idazi.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And at this time, folks, I think we will give Mr. Patrick 1 minute to close out. This platform is available to you. Maybe next time when you come a lot more sooner, we can have you for a longer time. So give us 1 minute in your closing statement, Mr. Patrick.
So thank you, Mr. GARLEY, and I appreciate all your panelists. Like I said, we are struggling. Want to present a new personality of Liberia. It's not just about Margibi. I think Liberians are struggling. We are struggling because the good people are afraid to contest in the political process. I was in the United States working in a very good position. I had to leave to come to Liberia. I risked my life. I risked my education. I risked the life of my child and everything to come to Liberia to convince our people to say, look, Liberia needs a new breed of leaders. Anyone who is listening to the sound of my voice tonight, we are making one of the greatest sacrifices. We need your support to convince those who are willing to make a change in Liberia. We always pray that we need good leaders, but at the same time, we also pray for the voters to be unique. The challenges we face here in Liberia, specifically in Margibi, people like us who have nothing in our pockets. We have the international experience. We have stood in defense of the most vulnerable people in society. I went to jail in this country. I was tortured. I was psychologically tortured. I was imprisoned by the National Security Agency. It took the United States government to fly me out of this country to Washington, D.C. While I was there, they gave me scholarship to go to Harvard. I graduated from Harvard. They asked me, what do you want to do? I said, I want to go back to Liberia to represent my country. I am here. We are struggling. We need your support. In order to change Liberia, we cannot change Liberia while talking on this radio. You need to be on the ground. Right now, as I speak to you, I am in Kakata tonight. Many of the people here don't have electricity. That's why I came on air very late. We need your support. Whatever way you can support, this is a movement. The Fandela Patrick that you are hearing tonight, there's no trace record about me involved in corruption. What I have done throughout my life is to risk my life in defense of the most vulnerable people in society. When I get to the Senate, I think we can transform the lives of our people. I'm not desperate to run for the Senate. Let me make this very clear. I'm not desperate. But sometimes in a man's life, it's important for someone to stand up. And I risk everything. I came to Liberia to mobilize, to carry on grassroots engagements. And these engagement processes are very expensive. If Liberia will be changed, it requires you who are in America to lobby with your international partners to support people like Fandela who struggle on this Liberian soil before going to the United States and coming back. So again, Mr. GARLEY, I want to say thank you to your panelists and to those who are listening to us tonight. And may God bless you. I hope to be here again next time and on time, provided the internet doesn't delay me.
Thank you, sir. Okay, that was Vanessa Patrick. And just before we go home tonight, we have we have a new candidate in the race that is running for president. We want to listen to him. The name is Julius. Let us take a listen at Julius. Let's see what he has to say, folks.
Gbenya, our men are coming to poverty to prosperity. Gbenya, mana, awetu, daddy-o, that's what we want. 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 Oh man, we've got the man to the the mayor, he won't run for president. So we say we're bringing the man to the chair, Lily, because you, he can win because you're the most popular Oman here. Yes. Sao, chair, Lily, Sao. Yali, oh, that you know we want. 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 Amanda. Elucidate, Julia, elucidate.
Thank you, fellow compatriots. Mama, I've heard about you and I've come to you to lay my platform. As you all know, this country has been missing good leadership since 1987. So, I'm here with a better platform that will transform this country into a better country. Mama, I'm asking you to join the winning team camp 2023. I'm running for president not to enrich myself, but to transform this nation for good health.
Speak. The man can say I want you in the school. Speak.
Running for better health care for the people of Liberia, Mama. I'm running for better roads. I'm running for economic transformation into the country. Generally, I wait your response that we can work together to move this nation forward.
So
you expecting me to share my summer and damage your country yet? Say you been here in America, what you not do for the country? No, I'm asking you. Say you been outside the country, what you not do for the small training? What you not do for the youth? Charlie, I've been working on the ground. What you call I've been working on the ground? Where were you aspiring when our commentary damaged the year? The whole community that was so people say. Where were you aspiring? Oh, because they not hold you by your stomach, eh? No, don't hold my hair. I'm talking to your honorable. Don't hold my hair. Charlie, they not hold you by your stomach, eh? Charlie, I thought you want me to. Charlie, I understand where this is coming from. Hey, get the my $5,000 for cold water. So, make it right. Let me tell her I'm just any kind of a person. I talk and do. When I talk, I do. Give her something. $50 just for cold water. Just for you to join the winning team. So you think you can hold me now, eh? No, you think you can close my mouth with $50. When you win, then you get in power, you think that your car, people can't come to you. Then you tell your woman, you go abroad, your children, you go eat good food abroad. What you call bad bag of coal? Tell your son of my swamp in front of me. I say, you my yard. The way they don't hold you by your stomach, you go. You leave my yard. You gotta leave. I said, you leave my yard, please. You gotta leave my yard. I will tell you. No, let me tell you what's on you. You leave my yard. That's our money. Let me not for my Nina. Not for my Nina. I tell you, leave my yard. You leave my yard. Leave my yard. Leave my yard. You leave my yard. And follow your man and leave my yard.
For your grandchildren's future. Oh my, you so poverty. You are still on your zero.
You coming to and say, when you were when our government told us for, yeah, the children here no good school. The children can go to school. When you were can't tell say you are in America, like honorable, you can't vote for him. Your son swan again. You say your brother of food beneath. Just come on and hold you. Son swan la bien. Can't tell me say Charlie do more vote for him. Vote for him where? You're very good. Nonsense! And people just shine your eye, they come here again, that 2023. They come here with a fake promises, with a BB talk. All I can tell you, go and get your voting card so we can make good decision for the nation. Thank you.
I want to say a big thank you to Julius, the comedian, for that little show there. Well,
Very good.
well, folks, that's how we go home tonight, and I will just go around the room to get closing statement from all of you. That'll begin with our dynamic co-host, Mrs. Letty Bruce Rabbits.
Mm-hmm. I want to say thank you to you guys for holding it down. Thank you to our audience for being here every evening or the evenings that we're here to listen to our issues or the issues that are plaguing our country. We thank you because without you there'll be no Liberia. We are the diaspora, as someone says. We are the middle class. We help to keep the economy going. You heard Miss Mary Broad the other night speak on how the diaspora is very important. So we're not here just to criticize. We're just bringing you issues to think about. And want to thank that comedian because that is the issue. Comes election time, everyone comes to you and says all of the great things, but do they really do them? You have seen patterns of these actions. Go out, register, and when you see something, say something. Don't just say, oh, people think. When you see corruption, speak now, because what starts here will end at the polls. Thank you very much, Mr. Garley. Datus and Dr. Fisk, have a great evening. See you on Friday.
Dr. James Fisk. Dr. Fisk? Unmute your phone, please. Okay. Idatus?
Looks like he's frozen.
Yeah,
well, Ashford, thanks for that committee session.
Yeah.
Dr. Fix, are you back? All right, he's still frozen. Well, thank you for that committee session that you just have us to look at. It's a reflection of the systemic problem we have in our country at this time. Mm-hmm. And Liberians need to think and think hard. I'm very confident that an opposition unity will be a reality very soon, or a collaboration for the greater good of the country. It is also my hope, that in as much as we differ politically on issues, we can do that in the spirit of love and not antagonism, hate, profanity, but debate the issue. Because right now it's about the minds and hearts of the Liberian people. We can be respectful in doing that. In as much as I criticize the government, I also hope and seriously desire that President Weah will certainly harness the courage and wisdom to do what is right by the country for the greater good of his people. Thanks to all of our listeners who have been stalwartly watching, dedicated ones. I certainly appreciate the comments, the intelligence of our audience, and to God be the glory for all of them. I thank you for listening to us. And please make your recommendations in the writings on the platform so that as we are debating these issues, not as people with all the answers, but we can also learn from you to make a good case concerning the hearts and minds of Liberian people for the greater good of the country. Patriotism over individualism, nationalism over ethnicity. Thank you.
And please take us home with a word of prayer.
Let us pray. Father, in the name of Jesus, we thank you tonight that we've debated these issues, but we certainly recognize how limited we are in our opinions to see the future. It is only you, O God, who knows what's best for Liberia. And we're praying for the best leader after your own heart, because your word declares that sin is a reproach to you. Righteousness exalts the nation. We are praying for a leader after your own heart in the name of Jesus. As those who are watching right now, Lord, if there be any need to be healed, we ask that they be healed in the name of Jesus, according to your word of Isaiah 53:5. And we declare finally that the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and give you peace. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow you all the days of your lives as you dwell in the house of the Lord. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Pastor.
And folks, I'm afraid that's all the time we have to be with you tonight. God willing, we will be back on Friday night, same time, same place. Until then, please allow me to borrow the wordings of the wise man. Tough times don't last, tough people do. The heart of a man is never known until he rises, because there's no second chance to make that first impression. Don't see okra and swallow bone, because you can't hide your naked neck from baby walking. What people think about you and the possibility of your dream is none of your business. Yours truly, the medicine of the microphone, the golden voice of Liberia, the broadcast commissioner. Or call him the doctor of law, the mastermind, Africa's media doobie-doo extraordinaire. He doesn't eat iron, but he's definitely stronger than a lion. The giant, that now you know me, Garley. I'm ASHFORD Garley. Have a great night.
Hello.